So in this session, we'll discuss about indexes in Splunk and what are the default indexes and how these default indexes will help us in Splunk. We'll also see the significance of having these indexes. Right? Okay, let's get started. What is an index? An index is a set of files and directories. It is nothing but a files and directories. You can see here the default indexes, right? So the default location of the indexes will be Splunk home, var lib, and Splunk, right? So this is my Splunk home, and I'm just getting inside of var lib Splunk, right? So you can see these are all the default indexes which will be created as part of your Splunk software, Splunk enterprise software installation, right? So underscore internal DB, underscore metrics, underscore telemetry, right? Underscore config trackers, right? So we'll have a detailed discussion, on these core DB, what is star DB, data model, and everything in our upcoming sessions. So in this session, we'll just concentrate on the default indexes, and we'll see the significance of having these indexes. All right. So I was talking about index. It's a file or a directory structure that you can see. The config tracker is a index. So when I say index, it's just a folder. So and here I have a subfolder where the data are getting stored. Let's say we have typically we will go with indexer, right? So basically, indexer is a component will have some storage space, right? For example, this is indexer 1 and which has 8 TB of volume, and let's say I have around 1600 IOPS, right? We will see what are the specifications that needs to be configured for indexer or constructed and all in our showing sessions. But for now, let's say I have 8 TB of volume. So which means there is a disk, there is a one single disk which is having 8 terabyte of volume. Now I'm just calling this as an indexer. What is an index in a indexer? Let's say I want to read a Tomcat related data. What I'll do, just to have a clarity on the data, just to have a separation of the data, I will create an index called Tomcat. So that if Tomcat application, let's say this is my Tomcat application and I want to read the log, in the sense, what I'll do, whatever the data which is there in Tomcat application, anyhow, I'll install my universal forwarder agent there. With the help of that, I'll store the data under Tomcat index. Whereas index is a place, it's a folder which will help me to store the data. So it will be easier for me to go back and see in future if I want to have index, Tomcat related data, I can just query with the help of this index. Similarly, let's say I have some applications or some network related data, network logs I want to store. So it is not recommendable. Of course, we can store on the Tomcat log, Tomcat index itself, but it will be clumsy, right? So we'll not be able to understand the data which are coming. If both the applications are sending logs under the same index, it will be difficult to understand and it will be difficult to classify the data. Hence, the need of having a different indexes in your indexer. So what I will do, I'll just create another index called uh, network, and I'll store these network related logs to this index so that it will be easier for me to identify the data. I can just go ahead and query the data with the help of this index. I know the network related logs can be stored in network index. So this is the purpose of having indexes within the indexer. Whereas indexer on a bigger picture, indexer is a place or indexer is a Splunk component, right? It's a Splunk component which will help us to store the data. Where exactly Splunk stores the data? With the help of indexes. So similarly, we have many indexes, right? We will see them little later. You can also assume that in a general term, each index can be referred as a SQL table in your day-to-day life. Why do we create multiple tables in a database? Just to have a clarity on the data. If I have something called as employee related data, it is always good to store those employee related data under employee table. And if you have something called as organization table, so that organization related data can be stored under organization table. So similar to that, we have something called as indexes in Splunk indexes. But we are not using any kind of RDBMS. We are not using any relational databases. Instead, we are using NoSQL database called Mongo. Right? Internally, Splunk has implemented some algorithm to store the data within a Splunk indexer. So hence, we are not installing any databases as such, but internally, this is the mechanism they have used to store the data from the different applications. And as we are not using any kind of tables, and as we are not using any relation databases, so which means there is no primary key concepts here. So instead of storing those data in rows and columns in Splunk, we are storing the data as flat files. When I say flat file, it refers a normal text files. Correct? So it will be easier. Now, how to identify the data? Let's say I have a 1 GB of data which I have stored in Tomcat index in this folder. Let's say I have a folder called, for example, App Server. So here I have stored some data. Then how exactly it recognizes, right? How exactly it does find the data while retrieving, right? So while indexing, while data is getting indexed under any of the index in indexer, it does create two types of files. Okay, the first file would be raw flat files, sorry, raw data files, and index. The second one is index file. Whatever the raw data file you are seeing here, you consider this as an entire book. You consider this as a entire book, and in the book, let's say I have multiple pages. Let's say I have 100 pages, and let's say this is my front page where I will just maintain something called as index file. Please understand, this is my index file, so which will be the first page in your book. You consider in that way, just for just to have a clarity. What will happen whenever we want to get some data out of this index? Right, I'll just mention some query. That particular search string will refer to index file first. So probably this index file will have, so let's say this particular Tomcat, Tomcat related data is under fifth page, or network related data is under 100th page. So it will have a detail of the data which are already getting ingested. This data, this index file will have those kind of a data. It will have a reference to that data. So if I'm searching something called as Tomcat under Tomcat index, so for the first action will be it will come to index file first, and it will find, okay, this particular Tomcat related log is in fifth page. So let me get into this fifth page and let me retrieve the data. So this is how the Splunk retrieve the data from indexes within the indexer. Hence, as this data retrieving is happening based on the reference basis, the data fetching is faster in Splunk. Got it? So this is about Splunk. So basically, Splunk is nothing but a folder, or it's a directory, however you can see. So the default indexes location is Splunk home, where live Splunk. These are all customizable. we can always change the location of the indexes. Please note that these are all indexes are nothing but the folders and combination of folders and subfolders. So here, no, the actual data is we will see how exactly it stores the result in our upcoming session. All right. So this index we understood. Now let's get into our default indexes which are available in Splunk. We have many default indexes. See, if you can see here, we have a config tracker, internal DB, introspection, metrics, telemetry, many more. We will try to see some of the default indexes and we'll see the significance of having these indexes in our Splunk environment. First, let us look at audit log. And whatever the internal logs we are talking about, audit or internal, these will be visible only for admin, only for administrator. See what I'm doing? I'm just trying to search for audit log. How to search? So I just have to mention index is equal to index name. So which index I'm planning to refer? I'm planning to look at the logs of audit index. So index is equal to underscore audit will give me the data which are stored. Basically, this audit log, whatever the data which are stored under audit, will have information about who has done what, who is doing what, who has logged in, admin has logged in, and what did he search, where did he search, when did he search, right? So these kind of data will be maintained in audit logs, in audit index. And as I mentioned, only these audit and internal log indexes can be visible only for administrators, not for the normal user. What do you mean by normal user? So this is, I'll just log in with the administrator credentials. Let me try to create a normal user. So come to settings, click on user. Okay, I'm just trying to create a user here. Okay, I think I have already created a user called Raj. Now let me delete it. Let me show you how to create and let's see that. So as of now, I have only admin user. Now I'm creating another user for Raj and I'm setting the password for login purpose. Okay, and let me keep as default. And I don't want to change the password after I log in. Yeah, this is what I have created a user called Raj. Now as of now, I logged in as an admin user. I could see these many options, correct? I could see these many options as well, like data, distributed environment, users and application systems, and everything. And also, I can also look for some internal indexes logs. For example, index is equal to internal. With a search, I'll be able to see the data of audit logs or internal logs, right? Whereas, let me just log out and log in with the normal user, what the user had created, Raj, and let me enter the password of it, and let me try to log in. If you just click on this setting, you don't see any other options except knowledge, and under users and authentication, you'll only see option of token. And let us try to search the internal index data. However, we were seeing for admin user. Right? Index is equal to the score internal. So these data is not at all visible for these normal users. And if I look for all time data, will not see. So similarly, underscore audit will not be able. So this is the difference, right? So only admin can look into these internal indexes logs. So that I have shown you. So let me enter the admin password. So that now I'm just logging with admin credentials and I should be able to see this. Right? You understood, right? So basically, these indexes are visible for admin, not for normal user. Right? So again, so here I'll do this because as I logged in as admin user and I should be able to see this audit. So in short, audit log reports who is doing what and who is logged in, kind of auditing related data which is stored under audit index. And coming to second default index in Splunk is underscore internal. So this particular underscore internal will store the Splunk internal log itself, which means this internal log will help us in troubleshooting some issues. What kind of troubleshooting is can store here? So typically in a distributed environment, we will have different components called subthreads, indexers, and many more, right? So it does help us in checking the health of each component. Our indexers, our subthreads, our universal forwarders are healthy, how these components are behaving, are these subsets are sending data to indexers, right? So these kind of information will help us going forward. These kind of information will help us in troubleshooting or mitigating some issues. Right? This is the help of having underscore internal index. Next, the third index will be main. Basically, the main index, the main index which is created, right? Let's say user is trying to enter some data. User is entering some data. For example, let's say this is the data. Let's consider this is the e-commerce application, and I want to send these data to my indexer. So ultimately, what is needed here? Ultimately we need to have some index. By mistake, knowingly or unknowingly, if we forget to mention the index name while indexing the data, right? Splunk has identified this issue also. If somebody has not defining index, I mean where exactly this data needs to be stored. So in that case, Splunk has something called as main index. If user does not specify any index details while onboarding the data, Splunk will store these data under index called main. Do you see my point? So this is the main index. Main index is the default index. All the external data will be stored if user does not specify any index, right? So typically, it's a good practice to mention this index data while data onboarding. If something goes wrong, if we forget to mention the index details, then my Splunk will accept this data and store those data under main index. This is the main index we have. This is the default index which is provided by Splunk. Okay, coming to config tracker. What is this config tracker? This is another index. So see, before Splunk 9, this facility was not there, right? So the Splunk version 9 onwards, we started seeing this index, which is especially designed for Splunk configuration changes. Let's say if you have some dashboards or if you have some knowledge object, if somebody has enriched that knowledge object, right? So this kind of tracking was not there. So by considering that fact, Splunk has introduced another index called underscore config tracker, which will have the data about your configuration. What changes have done for this configuration? For example, we will have input.conf or props.conf and transforms.conf. So for these configuration changes, so this will have a track or this will have the changes of the you can see configuration changes.log. So which means whatever the changes we do in our Splunk configuration, all these data should be captured and kept under config tracker. So definitely this is one of the great features which is offered from Splunk 9 version onwards. So that will have a clarity on the configuration changes who has done and what changes have done. Correct? So this is about config tracker. Coming to introspection index. What is introspection index? Typically, this particular introspection index as introduced from Splunk version 6, if I remember, yeah, 6.1 version. From 6.1 version, we started seeing this introspection indexes as well. What exactly it will have in the sense, it stores the data about Splunk enterprise instance and also a environment, right? Which means this particular, let's say, section, which means it does collect the information of your system running Splunk and also helps to diagnose the Splunk performance issues, right? So definitely, if you are facing some performance issues, see here you can see resource usage log, right? So which means it is trying to get the log of resource usage. Definitely, this can be a performance related log. Correct. So as of now, I've just installed Splunk, so I don't see much information on this. But yeah, definitely this introspection will help us to get the resources kind of a data. I mean, whatever the data or whatever the status of my resources are all are healthy, or it will help us to troubleshoot some system related, performance related configurations. Performance related issues can be stored, or these performance related issues can be addressed with the help of introspection index. Okay. All right. So let's come to a metrics index. So this is the default index which will help us, right, to maintain some kind of a metrics. For example, if you want to maintain some chip utilization data or memory or disk utilization data, right, all these information can be stored under metrics, which means Splunk will maintain these system related data, kind of infrastructure related data. For example, cloud watch or IoT devices like CPU idle time. What is the CPU idle time for this particular indexer? So these kind of information will be kept under metrics index, right? So which will be more of system related logs, kind of again it's a performance related logs, or uh, kind of your hardware related information will be captured under metrics index. All right, coming to telemetry. So basically, when we see index called telemetry, so most of the cases it does participate in license usage summary logs. See, in the last session we just discussed about how indexing works. Whenever we index a data, right? Let's say we have a 1 GB of data which is being captured from these network devices. So there is as part of indexing process, right? It does also calculate the data which is getting stored, right? And same amount of data will be reported to us license mark, correct? So similarly, this telemetry index will have the license usage summary logs, so that which will help us to track a license or to track the data which are getting ingested into. All right. And the last one, we have something called as the fish bucket. Basically, this whatever the data which are receiving from different applications, these will be read by fish bucket first. We will have a detailed discussions about fish bucket. So it is just how exactly it does is first it does read 256 byte of data, and later it will put a checkpoint, and afterwards it will look for the last 256 byte of data. We will have a detailed discussion. So basically, this fish bucket index will help us to not to duplicate the data within Splunk environment. So it will always have a high of so what kind of data or what data it has indexed into my Splunk. Right? So if you want to rewrite the data once again, so it is possible with the help of fish bucket. So typically these fish bucket configurations will reside on universal forwarder. What is the main benefit of having the fish bucket? So it avoids data redundancy. right? Okay. So this is all about the default indexes. So in the next session, we will create the Splunk index and we'll see the configuration file, how it works, and where exactly Splunk indexes configuration gets created. Okay, thank you.